Hello there, everybody. This is Krista, and welcome back to Adventures in Metaphysics. Now, I had myself a grand old time last night because I am here today to do I'm not sure what the hashtag is. It's either hashtag 22 faves or my favorite majors. But we're talking about my favorite major arcana cards from across all of my decks. So I pulled out all of my favorites yesterday, my favorite decks, and sorted through, and I think I spent probably 2 hours on this, picking out my favorite cards for each. And I have to say, even if you're not someone who makes videos, this was so much fun to do. Like, really so much fun to do. And it also was really eye-opening to kind of see which decks I immediately grabbed for first, and some of them that I tried to bring in, and none of them ended up being my favorite. Actually, there's a deck or two that ended up in the timeout bin because I just realized, like, oh my gosh, like it's similar to this other deck that I immediately grabbed. So it was a lot of fun, and I got a lot of different things out of it. So anyway, that being said, let's just get right into it. So starting with the Fool, my favorite Fool card comes from the Mons Tarot. Now, the reason I love this Fool so much is it's simple, it's classic, it's, very much Smith-Waite based, but I like that we have our Fool here kind of hopping from star to star. If you think of the star as that symbol of hope, in the star card, I really like the idea that our Fool is journeying along, sort of riding on hope. I think it's a really interesting way to see that. So, that's my favorite Fool. I think this is going to be a quick video. I'm not going to, dwell too long on each card, but we'll see. Going on to the Magician, we have the Conjurer from the Victorian Fairy Tarot. Now, I have to say, I'm not typically a fan of the Magician card purely because it just tends to confuse me. But seeing it as the Conjurer, as someone who can kind of, conjure things up and bring things into existence that they want, that made it click a bit more in my head in terms of the meaning of the card. So I really like this one and how it takes that view. So, that is my favorite Magician. The High Priestess we have from the Gentle Tarot. Honestly, I don't have that much of an explanation for this one. I just think the image is so striking. I pull this card a lot from that deck as well, and just I love the idea of the owl as the High Priestess because it really is that kind of creature of the night. They're seen as very wise, and I like putting it into that figure. But I just also think this image is so beautiful. And I was trying to just kind of go with my gut reaction of what my favorite is. And some of them had to do with the meanings, and some of them are just the images. I love the meaning that's given to this card as well in the guidebook, but something about that picture is just I really love it. The Empress I chose from the Hush Tarot. I really love this image because I think it's probably the only deck I have that shows the Empress almost in this like battle-ready pose. I think a lot of the times we see our Empress seated and, caring for young ones, some sense of that, which gives really great meaning to the Empress. It makes a lot of sense, and I have a lot of cards that I like that show the Empress that way, but this one just takes it in such a different direction, where, we see the Empress as that kind of caregiver, mothering role, and I think this just makes, I'm gendering, accidentally, I think, based on the Smith-Waite cards or, how the images look. So I apologize about that. But anyway, I think this Empress here adds something so dynamic to the usual meaning where it just adds layers to, I think, what caregiving and motherhood could mean. And I love that it looks like she's kind of ready for battle, where it gives that idea of she's going to really fight for what matters to her. I think it's really cool. It gives me a very a goddess type energy. I think kind of the mothering experience you can have from goddess energy. That's what this card makes me think of. So that is my choice for the Empress. The Emperor, I had to go with the teeny tiny tarot Emperor because I just having this cat as the Emperor cracks me up, because when you think of the Emperor, it's a very, authoritative ruling type figure, and who rules over your life more than a cat does? Paul and I always joke that, this is Stevie's house and Stevie's world, and she is just letting us live in it. Because she makes all the rules. So the Emperor is another card that I am typically not a fan of. It's not my favorite one to get, but this one I just really love. I love the idea given to that. Now we have the Hierophant, and for that, it is the ancestor card from the Wildwood Tarot. And that is because this card portrays Ellen of the Ways, who is a goddess I have been working with recently. And that's just been a really cool experience. And I think I shared this, but I had this experience where I kind of had a run-in with a deer, I guess you could say, where it was really up close in the backyard when I was outside. And when I pulled cards afterwards, this card popped up, and it just was it was just really cool. But I like having her as the Hierophant because she is a goddess who is meant to keep you on your path and on the one that is really kind of meant for and right for you. And I like that meaning of the Hierophant versus the kind of usual priest or pope-like figure we tend to see. Yeah. I think I just like this idea a bit better than kind of that classic Hierophant card. Because I think that tends to bring up feelings about, rules and staying on a path that I think a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth about. I know I do, so having this be so different was really cool for me to see as well. The Lovers. I had to pick this card from the Cute and Creepy Tarot. This just cracks me up, seeing Frankenstein and the wife of Frankenstein together on this card. It just, I mean, they are the perfect lovers because, they have to kind of exist in this world where they didn't choose their creation, I mean, technically that's all of us, but even more so, they're kind of outcasted in this way where it's a real choice and a choice for them to kind of stick together to make it through. And I don't know, it also just makes me laugh seeing them as the lovers here. I just really like this card. Yeah, so that's my choice for the Lovers. The Chariot we have from the Victorian Romantic Tarot. And honestly, I just love this image. I love that we have these 4 women here just riding this chariot, seemingly almost like it's flying. It just gives this sense of these almost like 4 witches in flight, and something about that I just love. It just gives me such a feeling, this card. I just really love that one. For strength, I picked the card from Pagan Otherworlds because I really enjoy the bear versus the lion that this card shows. I'm not exactly sure why, but I also like how she is holding on to this bear, where it seems kind of stern but caring all at the same time. I don't really like the image of someone kind of fighting a lion. And I also have a lot of decks that show like almost embracing a lion or some kind of animal like that. And I do like those. But sometimes those feel a bit too soft for me, because I see strength as overcoming your own shadows, your own self-doubt that it kind of tells you you can't. And so when I think of it that way, I want to be embracing them to the point of telling myself it's okay and integrating it as part of myself. But I also need to be a little bit stern to kind of rein that in so that I can kind of move on with things. So that's why I like this image for strength. Next we have the Hermit. I had to choose the one from Oak, Ash, and Thorn because, come on, the little hedgehog. Oh, it's so good. I just think this picture is so cute. But beyond that, I love how we get these fireflies instead of the lantern. And this hedgehog is following a very clear path on its own, but guided by the light of these fireflies. I just love the idea of that. That in a way we all have these paths that we kind of have to walk alone. And it's not, not necessarily a physical path or physically being alone, but in some of the work we have to do, you kind of have to do it on your own. But knowing that there's these little lights to keep you moving along, I think is really cool. For the Wheel of Fortune, I chose the one from the Triomphe de la Luna because surprisingly, of the decks I pulled out, this is the only one that shows something kind of going up and something going down. And I really like how this figure, you can tell, is really celebrating, and this one is panicking a little and is on that downfall. And that's how I like to see the Wheel of Fortune, of just how there's naturally going to be these highs and lows that we just have to kind of deal with and get through. And I think this is the best card that kind of really explicitly shows that. All right, next we have Justice. And again, we are bringing out the Hush Tarot. Now, most of my decks have that classic image of someone holding scales or balancing something, where this one is so different. Again, similar to the Empress, it gives a much more active role to the character we have in this card. How it gives a bit more of a feeling of revenge is a strong word, but it doesn't feel stagnated, where sometimes I feel like the Justice card shows up to kind of say, like, everything balances, oh my gosh, why can't I say that word? Everything balances out to make things even and fair. But I feel like with that classic image of someone holding scales, it feels almost as though you just kind of have to sit and wait for that to happen, where things, a lot of the times, you can have a bit more agency, not to be rash or take matters into your own hands that you don't need to, but knowing that there's something you can do to help yourself in those moments, even if it has nothing to do with, maybe something being unfairly done to you. Whether, it could just be like self-care around making yourself feel better or whatever the heck. but I just really like the active role this character has. Next, the Hanged Man I have from the Forest of Enchantment. I love that we have the character here kind of encased in this amber in this tree. And that it's suspension. I like thinking of the Hanged Man as gaining new perspective. And this card really gives off that idea, but also shows us that it's okay to kind of simmer on something and for it to take time for your perspective to change or to really think something through. Because I know for me, changing my own ideas can take a really long time. And so this card kind of shows that sometimes that's the best thing. And it's going to be more effective if you do take your time on it. So I really like that card. Now we are at the Death card. And my favorite one, it was a real toss-up. Northern Animal has always had my favorite Death card. But I had to choose this one. And it is the Misery Collector from Terra Volatile. Now, this is one of the expansion cards. And as they were shipping out the cards, they sent out an email saying that this card had a misprint and it's missing the M. And when I got in the expansion pack and was going through, I just loved that mistake so much. I feel like it really actually added something to the card. Because for me, when the Death card comes up, you know, I think about it as change and necessary change. But I always hold a lot of fear and seriousness around needing to change things. And usually I need to be reminded that, you know, it's not scary and I can be lighthearted about it. It might not be so extreme. So this mistake here reminds me of that, you know, that it's not always that serious. So I love that card. Temperance is from my new teddy bear tarot. I love that we have this bear here kind of mixing potions almost and creating a concoction, because I think, so temperance, if you think of it as balance, sometimes when I'm looking at, again, that classic image that I'm sure we all know, I think of it as almost balancing out two entirely separate entities. But here it's being really bubbled together in this same cauldron. So thinking of maybe balance isn't necessarily doing one or the other, but integrating them into one thing. I really love that idea that this card gives. The Devil we have from, oh my gosh, I couldn't think of the name. Mystic Masters. Now the reason I love this devil is because at first sight, you don't even notice him. The attention is brought to our main figure here, and the devil is right in the background here, really hidden. And I love that thought for the devil, because I think sometimes the things we tie ourselves down with or hold ourselves back because of isn't obvious. And it takes a while to realize that we're even doing that to ourselves. So I love how this card embodies that idea. The Tower is again from the Teeny Tiny Tarot. It says, we've got a teacup and books tumbling here. And it says, everything you thought you knew. And when I saw this card and read that quote, it just was so striking to me of the things tumbling down is everything you thought you knew. Because I think a lot of the times we almost construct realities for ourselves thinking that nothing's ever going to change. Or construct realities for ourselves telling ourselves that, like, this is what we want when it's not. And that's what usually comes crashing down. So I love this card, you know, and whether it's good or bad. our lives are always going to be shifting. Things will always be shifting and coming down and being built up. And so I love that quote on that card. Okay, for the star, I've got from the Forest of Enchantment, Starlight. I love whenever I get these cards, I feel like you can really build stories around, and you can kind of see the scene happening before and after these cards. So I love picturing these little like elf fairy figures climbing up this tree in order to see the night sky, and I can imagine it's easy for them to do that, but then when they get to the top, getting to see this view is so worth it. And it gives the idea of, you've been through this struggle, you've been kind of climbing your way out, and when you get to this beautiful view, there's so much hope. Have you ever just like stood at the top of a really big hill, or like maybe even an actual mountain, and looked at the view below you? And something about that is so hopeful when you can kind of see something from that perspective. So that's the idea that card gives me. The Moon is from the Playful Heart Tarot. I see the moon as, digging into our shadows and bringing them to light. So I love how around this figure we've got all this darkness and kind of like spooky figures and, things kind of grabbing at them. But they're being pulled out of that with this light in this heart here. And it almost looks like wings. And I really think that's such a cool way to see that, of investigating your shadows in order to pull yourself out of that dark place. That's kind of how I like to see the moon. The Sun is from Northern Animal. Because how happy does that skunk look? I love skunks. This card always makes me smile. And I think that's the point of the sun, kind of that authenticity, that joy and happiness. I just love like this moose and skunk getting along so well. It just makes me smile. Okay, for Judgment, I've got Oak, Ash, and Thorn. I love these butterflies coming up with this bird taking off for flight. I see Judgment as almost this kind of really big, something big and transformative happening, where there's a part of yourself that you have now fully come into and accepted and love. And so you've changed into this new form, you've taken off, and there's no going back from that. That's really how I like to see that card, is those moments where you have some kind of realization about yourself that changes you forever, but for the best, and you can't turn back from that. Super cool. I love that card so much. Sorry, I feel like the lighting is getting weird, but for the world, I have the Forest of Enchantment, the wide world, where we are kind of coming out of the forest to this open plains with our white stag here. I just think first of all, the artwork is so beautiful. But I love seeing this sense of completion of, you've come out of this forest through this journey, but there's still a road, there's still a road beyond that. You're still going, and you probably see here, we've got another forest here. You're going to come across things like that again. And it just continues on, there's no ending. So I just think that's really cool about this picture. So, of course, as I have mentioned before, I am a big fan of decks that add in their own extra cards. So I just thought it would be wrong for me to do this video and not show my favorite extra card in a deck. And that is this card from the Playful Heart Tarot. Embrace your inner child. And yes, it's mostly because of that strawberry hat. But this card just brings me so much joy. And I love that, embrace your inner child. It just feels like permission to just be myself whenever this card comes up. And It just makes me smile and makes my heart warm and fuzzy. So I really love getting this one. So that is my last favorite card I had to show you today. And it was just so much fun getting to pull all these out. It really was. So, that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this video and have a wonderful start to your week.